Here is our next set of 3 vocabulary words for Unit 5, and we're going to notice all of these words have to do with the water cycle, which is how water moves through the different locations on Earth, like the atmosphere and the hydrosphere and the geosphere and the biosphere. So we're going to start with our vocabulary for the water cycle. And you'll also recognize some of these words we talked about when we were talking about the phases of matter and how we change states of matter. So our first word is the word evaporation. And again, evaporation is a way that we can change from one state of matter to another. So the definition of evaporation is the change. It's the change of liquid water. Evaporation is the change of liquid water into water vapor, which is a gas. So the change of liquid water into water vapor or gas. Realize, because we're talking about water cycle, you're seeing me mention water and water vapor. But evaporation can happen for any substance, right? It's the change of a liquid into a gas. So what we're going to write in the details is how or why this happens. And if you think back to our last unit, the reason that atoms are going to start moving and changing from liquid position into gas position has to do with an increase in temperature. So in the details, we're going to write evaporation happens when temperature increases, right? When heat is added, that's when we get evaporation. So the change of liquid water into water vapor gas, that happens when temperature increases. And in the case of the water cycle, that increase in temperature is going to be brought to you by the sun. So for my example, I'm going to draw water evaporating from a puddle. I'm going to start by drawing my sun, which is my heat source. That sun is going to shine on my puddle or my lake or my ocean, right? That's where the liquid water is. And we know as the sun shines on it, it's going to make those atoms move faster, and they are going to go up into the air and become a gas. So the process of evaporation happens when temperature increases, the atoms move faster. If they're moving faster, they're going to spread out, so they're not going to be a liquid anymore. They're going to change into the state known as a gas. So that is evaporation. Now we have an opposite of this. Because, if that water goes into the air as a gas, that's great, but we're going to need to get that water out of the air in order for the water cycle to continue. So our second word today is the opposite of evaporation, and that word is condensation. So the definition of condensation is it's the change of water vapor. Condensation is the change of water vapor, which is a gas. It's the change of water vapor gas into liquid water. So again, now we're going the opposite way. The gas is slowing down to become a liquid. So this is going to happen when the temperature decreases, right? Where there's going to be less energy. So happens when temperature decreases, right? So a temperature drop, we're going to have less thermal energy, and so the atoms are going to move closer to each other. So I'm going to draw an example here with a glass of water, right? So I'm going to draw it like this here. And some of you might know, right, that the water glass can develop these little water droplets that form on it. And that's because the air touches the cold glass and it causes condensation. So we're going to write water on a cold glass, right? So that is a process of condensation, right? The air touches the cold glass and those water molecules change from a gas into a liquid. So we also see this on like the shower door or the mirror when you get out from taking a shower, right? The air inside touches the cold mirror or the cold sink and it causes water droplets to appear. And then this process happens at a really, really large level in the atmosphere to make things called clouds. So evaporation, condensation, and then there's a step that comes next. And that last process is what's called precipitation. Precipitation. Precipitation means any form of water. Precipitation is any form of water. Precipitation is any form of water that falls from clouds. Any form of water that falls from clouds to Earth's surface. So any form of water that falls from clouds to Earth's surface. So in the detail box, what I'm going to do about precipitation is this is where the force of gravity is going to become important, because those water droplets that get created in condensation, once they get heavy enough, gravity is going to pull them towards the ground. So precipitation, we're going to write for the details, happens due to gravity, right? Once water particles get big enough and heavy enough, gravity is going to pull them down and towards the ground. And there are 4 basic types of precipitation that we typically talk about. We have rain, right? So our little droplets that we're most familiar with, we have rain. We have the crystallized version, which is snow, right? Snowflakes are frozen crystallized water. We have something called hail. Hail is little solid balls of ice. Those happen during a thunderstorm. And there's also a type of precipitation which you probably aren't familiar with because it's kind of, not found here so much in San Jose, but there's something called sleet. And sleet is raindrops, but they're like frozen rain. So sleet happens when raindrops freeze as they kind of are on their way down. So it's kind of a hard rain, but it's not exactly like hail, because hail forms that way up in the clouds before it leaves the clouds. And again, we're not going to get into the details about which makes which precipitation which, but you should have heard of rain, snow, hail, and sleet. Those are the 4 most common kinds of precipitation we have on Earth. So again, that's a look at our water cycle vocabulary. This explains how we go from liquids to gas and then back into liquid form again. We're also going to see there's another water cycle word called collection that's part of this, but most of you have heard the word collect before, so we're not going to add it to our vocabulary because that one's pretty simple. So I'll leave this up for a few more moments and then we're going to take a closer look at the water cycle today.